And I think we're live.
We're live. Good evening, everybody.
Live.
Hello.
Hello.
So here we are again with yet another special edition of CBTV. Some quite big news to go through today. But before we get into that, how are you both? You good?
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Good, good. Well, what a few days it's been. Where should we start? Well, I'll tell you where we'll start. First thing I think we need to make clear is the rules that have come into play today from 6 o'clock in Wales. A lot of people are saying that it's designed to stop the English from coming into Wales. And I think we just got to put things into perspective first. That is not what these rules are about, because I've had the opportunity this afternoon to read through the actual legislation. So what they've done is they've taken existing legislation in Wales and they've very quickly amended it to bring in conditions that restrict the movement of people in and out of Wales. Now, what's important with that is that me, as a resident of Ceredigion, and Jem, as a resident of Ceredigion, we are not allowed by law in Wales to cross the border to go into the high-risk areas in England. So it's a two-way thing. So it's not just designed at stopping people coming into Wales. It's also designed at stopping people in areas of Wales that are not under public health protection. So what that means, at the moment, you've got 21, 22 counties in Wales. Most of them, bar 6 of us, are under public health protection measures, i.e. they're in lockdown. So Caerphilly, Bridgend, Merthyr, Swansea, Cardiff, the counties up in North Wales, they're under public protection measures, public protection health measures. The other remaining counties, Ceredigion, Powys, most of Gwynedd, most of Carmarthen, Carmarthenshire, Monmouthshire, Pembrokeshire, we're not. So these rules, these new regulations, are as much for us to adhere to not go into certain areas of not just England. Like, for example, legally now, as a resident of Ceredigion, I am not allowed to travel to Northern Ireland, because not only would I be breaking the law in Northern Ireland because they're under sort of this circuit breaker lockdown, I would also be breaking the law in Wales. So I could be sort of reprimanded both sides, if that makes sense. So the reason that these regulations have come into play in Wales is because if we look at the highest category in England, sort of the tier 3, so the best example, I think, is Liverpool. That's the only example at the moment. People living in the Liverpool area who are under tier 3 restrictions, they are still allowed to travel outside of Liverpool. The guidance says you shouldn't travel outside of Liverpool, but the law doesn't back that up. So the First Minister, by all accounts, he sort of discussed this with the Prime Minister and said, look, we need to do something about this, because what was happening was that there were people in certain areas of England, and I'm not just singling out Liverpool, I'm just using it because it's an easy example. There were people from Liverpool who were travelling across the border, going to various places in Wales for the day because they could legally do so. But then there are people in Wales who are under lockdown, where the infection rate is a lot less, who couldn't legally travel outside their county boundary to go to other parts of Wales. So this measure has been designed to protect the remaining counties in Wales which are not under lockdown restrictions, because the fear was, and you may have seen this on the TV with Simon Calder, he did an interview with Phil and Holly, where he said Aberystwyth is a great place to come. Yes, it is a great place to come and visit on holiday. But that alarmed a lot of people locally and sort of nationally in Wales, thinking that we're going to get an influx of tourists from all over the country who are going to come to these parts of Wales where the infection rate is low, and before we know it, our infection rate is going to be up there. So that's why these measures have been introduced, as far as I can tell. But the thing we need to make clear is that it's not just to stop the English or people living in certain parts of England from coming into Wales. It's sort of reciprocal. It's both sides. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So where does that leave us? Well, in true form, the Welsh government, they like to leave things to the last minute. what they tend to do is they have a press conference on sort of a Tuesday or a Wednesday, and they'll make this big announcement, but then the guidance doesn't actually get published until at least 48 hours later. So what I'm looking at now is the actual legislation, which I've downloaded from the Welsh Government website, and this, I got this at about 3 o'clock this afternoon when it was released. I've managed to have a read through it. I'm not a lawyer, I'm not legally minded, so it's sort of a...
You've done it a lot better than we have. I didn't understand a word. Thankfully, you're translating it for us.
Yeah, so I'm not going to go through it verbatim, page for page. What I will say is that there's nothing in this legislation that allows people from certain areas of the UK, and I'm going to be careful, I'm not just going to keep saying England, because it's not just England, it's the central belt of Scotland, it's the entirety of Northern Ireland, and it's a good chunk of England. It's going to stop people from certain parts of the UK from travelling to Wales, but there's nothing in this legislation. Excuse me, it's going to shut this door. Just give me a second. Hang on. Apologies for that. There's nothing in this legislation that would allow somebody in a restricted area to come and stay overnight in their caravan or their chalet. That is the headline here. Okay, so we've been inundated. Our switchboard has never been so busy, and you can imagine the questions have all been pretty much the same. Can I come on holiday? Are you going to kick me off? Have I got to go home? So first things first, in this document, and it's also links to this, we're producing a blog article that's coming out tonight, but this is freely available from the Welsh Government website. Contained within the legislation, you will see that it lists all of the areas of the United Kingdom that are excluded from travelling into Wales. Okay, so if the area you live is contained within this document, then that means you can't come to Wales and we can't come to you. Okay, so one of the things I don't want to sort of spend time doing tonight is answering questions from people asking, can I come to Wales? You're going to have to find that out for yourself within the legislation and look it up online, okay? Because it's quite a huge chunk of the UK. I mean, look, there's a long list there. But in essence, it's the entirety of Northern Ireland. It's the central belt of Scotland. It's the northwest of England. There's including Lancashire and Manchester. It's pretty much most of the Midlands. So it's Sandwell, Solihull, Birmingham, Wolverhampton. At the moment, it doesn't include Dudley. So Ian's a good example. Ian, you live sort of 3 miles one side to Wolverhampton, 3 miles the other side to Dudley, but your postcode comes under Dudley. So as a result, you are not affected by this legislation. The legislation also, when I've read through it, that gives a long list of reasonable excuses for people to travel into Wales. And again, you'll have to read through the list yourself to see what those reasons are. One of the reasons, for example, is for attending a wedding or a funeral. Another reason is for attending an officially organised event. Or another reason, for example, is attending an event like a sports event for a child. If the kid's got a football match or a rugby match or something like that, there's an exception for that in there. But again, there's nothing in there that's going to allow you to stay in your caravan or chalet overnight. And that's the point I need to make here. Now, I know that one of the questions we're going to get is, well, can I come to my caravan or chalet to prepare it for winter and secure it and to take belongings out? Now, my initial response to that, having read this guidance or legislation and the previous guidance from the people who are in lockdown areas in Wales, is yes, I think that would be classed as a reasonable excuse for coming into Wales. So if, for example, you live in Wolverhampton or you live in Sandwell or you live in Liverpool and you want to come and collect stuff from your caravan, you want to come and prepare it for the winter, I think it's reasonable for you to do that. But what I'm going to say is, and hopefully you appreciate this, I need to take further advice on that This is not me giving permission for that to happen. This is me saying, upon first glance and reading this legislation, and also, reading it alongside the previous legislation, I think it's reasonable. And the reason I think it's reasonable is because if you live in a lockdown county in Wales, you are allowed to visit your caravan to winterise it. Equally, if we take Park Farm as an example, which is in a county that is locked down, the legislation also provides the option for people to visit that county to winterise and prepare their caravan for the off season. But what I'm going to do, at some point this evening, the Welsh Government are producing a list of frequently asked questions. I'm pretty sure that question will be covered in there. But the way in which we will operate is, if you live in an area in England, I'm going to say England for now, because most of it, we haven't got any owners, as far as I'm aware, from Scotland or Northern Ireland. So this is, let's concentrate in England. If you live in an area of England that is subject to these restrictions, you would, in any instance, if you come in to winterise your caravan or prepare it for the winter, it would strictly be by appointment only, which is what we've been doing for our guests who live in the lockdown areas of Wales. So you'd be able to come from 10 o'clock in the morning, between the hours of 10 and 4. We'd need at least 24 hours notice. So you need to call us or email us, but it would strictly be on that 10 to 4 basis, and it would be a one-time thing. So you wouldn't be able to go, well, look, I'm going to come for between 10 and 4 this week, come back 10 or 4 the next week. It's a one-time thing to enable you to prepare and winterise your caravan. Okay. Now, I know we're going to get other questions along the lines of, well, I've got work to do in my caravan. I've got work to do in my chalet. The legislation say I'm allowed to travel across the border to carry out work. We're going to say we're not going to allow that to happen, because once we do that, we're going to be opening the floodgates, and we won't be able to manage that at all. We haven't got the resources to manage if people are genuinely coming to work on their caravans or chalets, or if they're coming to do other things and just using the work as an excuse. So even if you have sort of people booked in to do the work for you, at this moment in time, we need to be responsible. Well, we are responsible. We're always responsible. And I don't think it would be very responsible of us to start allowing people to come sort of carte blanche onto the parks to carry out work to, say, their chalets, as an example. Because I think when you read the legislation, you will be sort of skating very, very close to it in terms of it being reasonable or not. And that's what this is all about. If you do get stopped across the border, the person stopping you is going to have to make the judgment as to whether or not he thinks or she thinks that your trip into Wales is reasonable and it falls within this legislation. If not, there are sort of penalties and whatnot which you'll have to sort of pay. So I'm going to pause there for a moment, let that sink in, and I would imagine, Jem, there's probably 1 or 2 questions come in.
Not too many, actually. Some people have been asking about the link, so I have pasted the link in there of the guidance of which of the local areas that are. So let's have a look. Questions. Where would I download the list? Donna Michelle asks, if Wolverhampton go tier 1 in a fortnight, can we come still then?
Right. So again, look, I can't answer questions which are sort of if maybes and sort of hypotheticals. We can only deal in fact. So what I would say to everybody is, look at where we are now. As it goes, forget the fact that Wolverhampton isn't in tier 1 yet. Wolverhampton is in tier 2. This legislation is for tiers 1 and 2. So, Donna, unfortunately, Wolverhampton is already covered by this. So you can't come into Wales at this moment in time.
It's tiers 2 and 3, isn't it? Is it tiers 2 and 3?
Sorry, 2 and 3. Sorry, I do apologise. You are right. It's tiers 2 and 3. Tier 1's fine. It's tiers 2 and 3.
I knew it.
Tanya Lulu asks, can we rent to people from non-high risk areas?
Yes.
Laura Woolley asks if.
But just on that point there, and this goes back to something I've touched on in previous broadcasts. You are responsible if you're letting out your caravan or your chalet. It is 100% your responsibility to ensure that your guests are from where they say they are, and that you're not allowing guests to come from areas that are within a lockdown. So you need to make sure you take as much reasonable precautions as you possibly can to ensure that you do the necessary checks. Now you're probably going to ask, well, how do we do that as a park? Well, when people arrive on park, we will be looking at sort of address documents and things like that. So we are doing our own checks and balances to make sure that they are from where they say they are. And the lights have just gone off on Gem. Where it's very difficult if you're managing sort of guests and they're checking in and you're at home and they're at Clarick or wherever it may be, you've got no way of knowing. But just bear that in mind.
Donna Michelle asks, what if we've an extended lease over Christmas, etc.?
I don't really understand what you're asking there, Donna. Sorry. So if you want to elaborate on that a bit more, I'll try my best to answer it.
Laura Woolley says, hi, we've got a holiday booked through the park. We're in a high lockdown area as of today. Would our holiday be refunded or rearranged to another date?
Give us a call. We'll our preference is to move it to another date. That's what our preference is. But we understand that there are, on certain occasions, exceptional circumstances, and we'll look at each case on an individual basis. But our preference is to try and move the holiday to another date. But you'll need to call us on that one, and we'll sort of discuss that on a one-to-one basis.
Joe Talbot says, we're visiting Woodland Vale tomorrow and have let Kathy know, but do we still have to email Trace at Vale tomorrow too?
No, you just need to download the app, the NHS COVID-19 app, and you can use that for checking in and out of venues, including all of our holiday parks.
Natasha Kemp's actually, she's asked a question, but I think you covered this as I typed this. Yes, you're safe to come, Natasha. Save asking you, Thomas. Yes, you're safe to come. She's from a tier 1 group. Carol Gardiner says, having 2 caravans, will be able to come twice, so we have plenty of time to do what we need to do as we're shutting them down at different times, as we still have bookings.
That one, I honestly, I'm not going to give an answer to that because I don't know, and I'm not just going to make an answer up on the spot. It's all about, is that reasonable? And if it's reasonable for you to come and shut one caravan down in one day, it's probably reasonable to say if you've got 2 caravans, you'd need 2 days to do it. But that would be, if you was stopped or asked a question, we are not the judge and the jury. It's the authorities that are. So leave that one with me, Carol, and we'll get back to you with a definitive response on that.
Very different type of question. Zoe Anderson says, I'm coming to Claret Bay tomorrow for a night. Is the swimming pool open and can I book over the phone on the journey in?
Yes and yes.
As long as you're not a sublet.
Yes.
Lariscaria.
Zoe?
Where's she from?
I don't know.
She doesn't actually say.
Well, as long as she's in a Lariscaria, she can come, can't she? But if she's not, she can't.
No, it was about the swimming pool.
About the swimming pool.
Gwen Hughes, we live in Shropshire and in the over 60 age group. Do you think we should lock our caravan down?
It's an individual choice, and it's difficult for us to give advice on that because I think if you're in the over 60 age group, I think the age is irrelevant. It's down to how you feel and what you think is the right thing to do. I think a lot of people are now going to sort of go, well, that's it. Let's throw the towel in. Let's lock the caravan up, and we'll give it another crack next season. I think some people are going to be of the opinion, well, let's see where this takes us. Let's see where we are in a few weeks' time. I think the reality is, reading between the lines, and this has been announced in the press today, is that from Friday, we're going to have a circuit breaker lockdown in Wales. For some reason, Wales are calling it a fire break. But I think the generic term now is a circuit breaker. So we're just going to be flicking the switch for 2 weeks, and that would put us pretty much into a full-on lockdown. Now, I don't know how that is then going to affect this legislation that we're talking about today. I don't know if they're going to say, well, that's it, we're completely shutting up shop, everything stops for 2 weeks. So if you are planning on closing your caravan down and you're able to do it, it's probably best to do it before next Friday. Like I said, we're not certain that Wales is going to go into this so-called circuit breaker lockdown. However, the First Minister mentioned it at his press conference today, and I would say that he did that for a very specific reason, and that was to plant the seed that it's going to happen. And I think if he had no intention of doing it, or it wasn't going to happen, he wouldn't sort of plant that seed at a press conference, because he's fully aware that people are now going to start thinking about what's going to happen with the 2-week lockdown and how it's going to affect them and some of the preparations they may need to make. And I think that will probably be announced in the early part of next week. So I think the way in which things are looking at the moment, I think we're going to, this time in a week, I think we will be day one of a 2-week lockdown. That will mean that the schools will be closed as planned for week one of the half term. And I think they'll extend the half term closure by a week. And I think they'll reassess the situation, which by then will be in the first week of November. And we'll see where we go from there. So it's everything is up in the air at the moment. On a personal level, I think it's a complete and utter balls up. And I think the way in which we as a country as a whole, as a United Kingdom, are handling it between the devolved governments and between the Westminster governments, I think is absolutely farcical. And somebody needs to get a grip of the situation. But it's very difficult because everybody's blaming each other. At the start of this, when this all happened, there was no party politics, there was no political divides. Everybody was coming together. But now this is turning into a political argument, and it's not fair because it's affecting people's lives and it's affecting people's livelihoods. Yeah. So the people in the corridors of power, you need to get yourself into gear and you need to get a grip of the situation, because at the moment it's a very, very poor showing.
Paul Fudge asks, is it still your intention to stay open until January?
We are not closing unless we are legally obliged to close. Simple as that. The only way we're going to close those gates is if legislation, such as the legislation in March that was passed through, compelled us to close. Other than that, we are open for business as usual.
It's got numbers in. I can't pronounce that one. The name, I'm sorry. This is from YouTube. Hi, we're from Anglesey and not under lockdown, but our van is on Park Farm. We've arranged to come to the van tomorrow. Are we allowed to stay overnight?
No. That's clear in the guidance. There's actually in the frequently asked questions, which is available on the government website, there is a question that specifically addresses that issue about coming to secure and winterize your caravan or your holiday home. But it also clearly states in the following paragraph that you are not under any circumstances to stay overnight. But here's the thing with it. So as an example, so from the person there who's from Ennismore and from Anglesey, if they wanted to come, for example, and stay overnight in Ceredigion or Pembrokeshire, they could do, no problem at all, because we're not subject to lockdown restrictions. So I can freely travel and stay in Carmarthenshire, Pembrokeshire, in Ennismore, anywhere in Wales which is not under lockdown restrictions. But I can't, for example, I wouldn't be allowed, as one of the directors of Vale Holiday Parks, I'm not allowed to stay in the caravan at Park Farm at this moment in time.
Could you travel through somewhere that's under lockdown, Thomas? Like if there's an area that's locked
down.
Yeah,
it's been. Yeah, I mean, the best example to give you the area in is the M4. So if you think about the M4 literally passes through every one of the areas in South Wales that's in lockdown. So there is, again, a section in the legislation about this that states if you are going from A to B, and the best route for you to get from A to B is to travel through one of these areas, unless there's a viable alternative route, then you can travel through.
Megan's dad, Thomas. First curfew was imposed in Wales 2 weeks back, and you had to register with the office to say you were staying. I assumed this was indefinite. Some have upped sticks and gone home this week? ?
Yes, I think what Megan's dad is referring to is Park Farm. What happened at Park Farm? Park Farm was unique, or is unique, because it is currently the only one of our parks that is located within a county that has lockdown restrictions, the county of Denbighshire in North Wales. So what that meant was when the lockdown kicked in Denbighshire, if people were already on the park, then there was no requirement for them to leave the park until their holiday came to its natural end. So they never had to cut short their stay. So one of the things which we did was we asked our guests who were on park to go and register at the reception. One of the things we will be doing at Claret at the moment from tomorrow is we'll send an email out. The email will probably go out tonight, Gem. I'll have a chat with you after we come off air. But to protect everybody's interests, it would be prudent for people on Claret at some point tomorrow to come to the reception if you're from one of those areas and say, I'm on the park, I'm from this area, and this is when I'm going home. Because I know for a fact there are local people out there who are reporting people who they think are in breach of the regulations. They've obviously got too much time on their hands and nothing better to do, in my opinion. But that's where we're at with this. So we will send an email out probably tonight, if not tomorrow, just asking people if you're currently at Claret. And I'm saying Claret because Claret is the park which has most people from England. And of the people that frequent Claret, most of them are from areas such as Sandwell, Solihull, Birmingham, and such like. We also have a number of owners from other parts of the country, but we will be putting that into action within the next 24 hours.
Clive Raymond says, to be clear, we're usually not allowed to stay after October 31st. Has this been lifted to allow overnight stays for the rest of the year?
No, I mean, it's, your season is dependent upon the date written into your license agreement. So if your license agreement says October the 31st, there's no sort of dispensation for that to be extended.
So a lot of people saying we've come down today to lockdown. Very sad that it's come to this, but we totally understand. Gail Millard asks, who do you have to email now to let you know we're in our van? I sent to Trace at Claret, and my guest rang me to say that Linda says sent it into info at Claret. Which address do I need?
If you've got a guest in your caravan, you need to fill out a sublet form, and that needs to be info at Claret Bay. The track and trace email, which we set up at the beginning of reopening back in July, that was just a temporary measure for us to record people entering the parks because there was no official app. Now there's an official app. We just say to everybody, please register with the NHS COVID app. That can track where you're at. You can check in, you can check out. But if you have guests staying in your caravan, then it is a requirement. Whether or not they intend on using the club is irrelevant. You need to send part A of the sublet form to info@claretbay.com.
That's a standard thing, isn't it? That's even nothing before COVID. That was a regulation anyway.
Yeah.
Claire Molloy, as the huge majority of Park Farm owners are in Tier 3 lockdown and we can't visit the site, when will the barriers be put down so we know the added security is in place?
I did answer that one last week. It's a task that's currently in hand.
Gwen Hughes, if lockdown was Friday, would one of our children be able to come to lockdown our caravan on Saturday?
You have to put a bit more meat on the bones for me there, Gwen. I mean, look, I can only go by. I've said this before. I can only give you what my interpretation of this guidance is, and I think it's down for individuals to, make their own interpretation. I don't know where Gwen lives. I don't know if she's in a lockdown area. I don't know if she's in a tier 1, 2, or 3. So many variables. I think what you need to do, Gwen, is just look to see if your area is subject to any restrictions. If it is, then you need to just sort of look at this guidance, or afterwards watch this video again, and hopefully I'll cover some of it off. If it's not, and there's no restrictions, when you're free to visit the park, as and when you choose.
But she has said, by the way, you've been absolutely brilliant. Thanks.
Thank you.
A lot of people have said that, Thomas. And
Thank
someone
you.
actually said Thomas for Prime Minister.
No, thank you.
No more questions on that as of yet. But if I've not answered it,
yeah, look, it's a difficult situation. I think we've been fortunate to get the summer season out of it. I think the reality is they're preparing for winter. They're sort of we will do tomorrow night, Jem. We will just come up because hopefully by tomorrow night, Jem just put a little message in the chat, the private chat between us. Are we doing tomorrow night? Yes, we will do tomorrow night, because I think it's a good opportunity to reflect on what's been said. I can read this a little bit more, and we can take some more advice from our advisors and also from our trade association. But like I said, it's been a very, very strange year, unprecedented. I was thinking the other day, I was walking around Marx's, and I got the car, everyone's got the masks on, and if I don't know, if say for instance you had some sort of an accident 12 months ago, and God forbid you went into a coma, and you woke up and you were suddenly now, and you saw images of people walking around with masks on and stuff like that, what would you think would have happened to have caused that? Do you know what I mean? What would you know? How would you sort of comprehend that in your mind? I thought to myself, the only thing I could think of, if I fell asleep for 12 months and woke up and saw images of people walking around with masks on everywhere, I would say, well, that guy in North Korea has been and dropped a bomb somewhere. That's the only logical thing I could come up with. I never in a million years would think about a global pandemic. It just shows you how unprecedented this situation is.
It's crazy, isn't it? We've got a couple more questions come through.
I'm having a curry tonight, so I'm going to try and answer them as quick as you can.
Emma J. Wilson, as an owner, we have our son and his partner plus 2 children using the caravan for half term, all being well, of course. We won't personally be there as owners. However, can I just clarify that my son and children can't use the pool?
Correct.
Angela Bird. Oh, no, she just wanted to say thank you all at Clarick. Had some lovely holidays this year. Take care and keep well. See you in 2022. What about 2021, Angela? Emma Griffin. Hi, I'm due to come next Friday from a tier 1 with a risk of Wales being locked down. Would I now be able to get a refund and book elsewhere? We've had that question.
Give us a call. We'll talk to you. We'll talk to you about that. We'll discuss your options.
If Wales goes on full lockdown next weekend, don't the clocks go back next weekend? So does that mean they'll have an extra hour in lockdown?
Trust you.
Sorry.
It's all right. We're used to it now, Ian.
Being very well behaved tonight, Thomas. I'm being very well behaved.
Yeah.
Angela just corrected herself to 2021. There you go. But you did spell my name wrong, Angela. It's with a J, not a G. But you're okay. You're forgiven.
If ever you forget, just think of Jeremy.
Yes. Or Gem and the Holograms.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that was a woman. It's a bit weird.
Still.
Nothing else come through as yet?
Okay. Well, look, I'm gonna shoot off. I'm gonna have my curry.
Lovely.
Ian, next time you come down from the Midlands, you can pick me a curry up if you can.
Well, although I'm in a tier 1 area, can I bring you a curry from a tier 2 area? Will I be able to travel that through?
I'm sure in this legislation, Section 4B says reasonable excuses bringing Thomas Scarrett a curry from the Midlands is acceptable. So just keep a copy of that with you.
Yeah, I will. I'll bring you one.
Yeah. All right. Well, listen, thank you for your company. I'll be back tomorrow night, same time. Hopefully, I can fill in some more of the gaps for you. But what I would urge everybody to do is to just go online, go to the Welsh Government website, familiarise yourself with the restrictions, and just make sure you put yourself in a position where you're not leaving yourself open to being prosecuted. But more important than that, you're not putting yourself in a position where you're potentially spreading this virus or catching it. That's the most important thing. And on that note, I'm going to say Mustari Gid and Gwel Thierry Borry. See you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.
Yep. So join us again tomorrow night, 7 o'clock. hopefully we'll have some more news for you. So we're going to say good night, God bless. See you all tomorrow. Goodbye.
Good night, all.